I'm excited about this Lenten season. One of our values at MCCDC is for us to have a faith that is real to life and that's practical. And one of the things we seek to do is to offer spiritual tools for us to have a practical, real to life faith. During this Lenten season, we have wonderful signs and symbols all around us. Thanks to Jay Nitz for this beautiful, beautiful decor. One of the things we'll be doing is really going deep into the practices of Lent. Now, some of us didn't grow up in a Lent tradition. I grew up in a tradition where Lent was something that you brushed off your clothes. And speaking of Lent, I noticed that I gave Clara a hug today. and I see that her name tag is sticking to my... So speaking of Lent, we'll give your name tag back to you here. There we go, yes. Sometimes a hug is not just a hug. You take something with you, and that's all right. So we want to give you and us tools to live our purpose as individuals and as a congregation, and we're very excited about that. God has given each one of us a purpose, and sometimes it's good to take some time to see if our purpose has shifted, to see if it's changed. Lent is a time to really listen and see what questions we have for ourselves and what questions God may have for us. We may ask ourselves, is this pattern in my life working for me? And if it's not working, what new pattern would work better? No matter where we are in our lives, one question that's good to ask from time to time is this question. Is this how I want to live for the rest of my life? Do I really want to eat healthy all day and then eat an entire bag of chips at night? For some of us who have those challenges. Do I really want to be focused all day and then somehow fall asleep binge watching Netflix for hours and waking up exhausted the next morning? The invitation is to look at our patterns. God speaks to us each in different ways. In fact, there's as many ways to experience God as there are people. So during this Lenten season, we're offering lots of different opportunities and openings with the hope that you'll find something that works for you, or that what we offer may give you an idea of something different that will work for you in this journey. Now, some may be asking, what in the world is up with 40 days? Well, 40 days really connects us back to our ancient forebears. The season of Lent really started in the 4th century, but it really dates back to some of the earlier journeys. In fact, the number 40 is very important throughout Scripture. There's the 40-day flood in Genesis. There's the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. There's Jonah preaching at Nineveh for 40 days. There's Moses, 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai. There's Jesus, 40 days being tempted by the tempter in the wilderness. That says something to us. All these numbers, be they days or years, makes it clear that spiritual growth takes time. We like things to be quick. We're taught that things are quick. We like things to happen not 40 days and 40 nights, much less 40 years. We want it in 40 seconds. Now, this morning I had a Health Warrior vegan protein mug muffin. It was ready in 60 seconds in the microwave. However, it was a little bit dry. So the truth is, 40 seconds would have worked for that mug muffin. But 40 seconds of spiritual growth takes time. It takes patience. It takes questions. It takes listening. It takes sitting still. It takes being distracted. It takes being irritated. It's saying, God, how long? God, I'm ready. Like you saw in our drama presentation today, I want an answer now. And God doesn't even say wait. God doesn't say anything sometimes. So even though we're creating some openings in our worship services, and our worship services are differently arranged during this season, what we're offering really is just an opening. What we're offering can't be forced. So today, I believe that many of us will hear that still small voice. Many of us today, I believe, will find renewed purpose. Many of us today will receive something particular in an experience of God in this service, and others may not experience anything. And that's okay. If you see somebody else jumping up and running up and down the aisles with their hair on fire, there's nothing wrong with you. It means that God's working with someone else in a different way, and that's okay. In our scripture today, we see that not only do we have questions for ourselves, and sometimes God has questions for us, we see that sometimes we have questions for God, and Elijah particularly has a very real question for God. Elijah wants to experience God. Elijah needs God. Elijah says, "Where are you, God?" And he's not hearing any kind of answer. Elijah has reached a point in his life where his purpose has gotten all messed up. He's had some great successes. He's had triumph over the prophets of Baal. He's shown God's great power. And because of that, Queen Jezebel is ticked off and has a death warrant on him. And suddenly, despite all of his courage and all of his success, he is now finding himself defined by fear, and he's running for his life. He's exhausted. He gets under a broom tree, wiped out, feeling nothing. He's despondent. And in fact, Scripture even shows that he comes to a point where he just wants God to take his life. Take me out back and shoot me. It's kind of where he's at that point in his life. He's desperate for God. So what does he do? He does the 40-day thing and the 40-night thing. He goes out. And for 40 days and 40 nights, he still doesn't hear anything from God. He wants God to show God's self. So he goes to a place where oftentimes in Scripture, God is presented. He goes to the same place where Moses experienced God, thinking, good enough for Moses? Probably good enough for me. Gets up there and waits. Where are you, God? And still nothing. He's trying to force it, and forcing it doesn't work. We all might learn that as well. We can just be open. The good news is he is open. The wind comes, it breaks apart some rocks, but he doesn't experience God. Earthquake comes, earthquake, no God. Fire, no God. He's looking for something spectacular. And then comes what Scripture describes as this sheer sound of silence that is a sound and yet silent. It's this paradoxical, amazing moment that's not loud or spectacular, but small. A still, small voice. And in that moment, God gives Elijah what he needs. He finds the joy coming back. He discovers a new purpose. And one of the gifts that God gives to Elijah is Elisha to serve as a companion on the journey. Doing God's work can be very, very lonely, and God knows that. So God sends Elisha. Part of what this scripture says is that as we open ourselves to the still small voice, we might receive exactly what we need for any moment in our lives. And I believe that is true for all of us today. Something going on with you that you can't figure out? Well, today we have an appointment with God for you. You may or may not get it figured out, but at least you'll take a step in that direction. God is ready to work with each one of us individually right here today. Perhaps to strengthen our relationships, perhaps to show us the next step in our career, perhaps to show us someone who we can help. All kinds of possibilities are right here today. Realignment of our purpose as individuals, and I'm excited about how God can realign our purpose as a congregation and how amazing that will be as God works through all of us. So what might that voice sound like? We've already said it's kind of quiet. There's a wonderful poet, Mary Carr, who wrote these words. It's called Wisdom, the Voice of God. She writes, 90% of what's wrong with you could be cured with a hot bath. God says, but you want magic. You want to win the lottery you never bought tickets for. The voice of God never panders. The voice of God offers no 5-year plan, no long-term solution, no edicts from a cloud. The voice of God is small and fond and local. So don't look for your initials in the geese honking overhead, or to see through the glass, even darkly. The voice of God says the most obvious stuff, like, put down that gun. You need a sandwich. God has something for each of us today. And so now we're going to do something we've never done quite like this before. We're going to move to this time of experiencing God and moving together as a congregation. And during Lent, we're going to have a time in our service called Appointment with God. And so we invite you to experience God in a way that's real for you, to try something different. You're invited to get up and move around, to walk around. You're invited to come and touch the waters if you wish. And so we pour these waters today. These waters remind us that God is always renewing and refreshing. We invite you to come and light a candle. Pray in this space. We have a kneeler. Or feel free to do a prayer walk through the sanctuary, just saying, I want Jesus to go with me. I want Jesus to go with me, whatever's on your heart. We also have slips of paper, and our ushers have those. They're blue slips of paper. You may have your own paper. And you heard the letters to God today. Feel free to write your own letter to God, or your own thoughts, or your own questions. And these are going to be formed into a prayer book, ultimately, that we will have as a congregation moving forward. So this is your time to move around, to write, to touch the water, to light a candle. This is your appointment with God. So now let's take a deep breath. Let's breathe out. Feel free to get up. Feel free to kneel. It's time for that still, small voice